Table 9 had 3 empty wine glasses, a crumpled napkin with lipstick I didn't recognize, and a silver fork lying sideways like someone had dropped it in a rush. I stood there, staring at it longer than any sane person would, because that's the exact spot where everything fell apart. Not loudly, not all at once. Just a quiet snap beneath the sound of clinking glasses and smooth jazz. Someone asked me if I wanted another drink. I didn't respond. I just kept watching the fork like it might explain something the past 6 months refused to. I was supposed to be networking, smiling, shaking hands, being the supportive husband to the dazzling Camille who, just 10 minutes earlier, was laughing beside her boss with her hand on his chest like that was completely normal. It wasn't jealousy. I wish it were that simple. Jealousy feels sharp and hot and immediate. What I felt was cold, slow. The kind of ache you get when your body knows something your brain hasn't accepted yet. There was a photo on the wall above table 9. A candid shot of Aiden, her boss, holding a wine bottle like a trophy. Camille was in the background of that picture, smiling at him like she'd already made a decision I hadn't been invited to. I didn't move for a long time. People passed by me, probably wondering why I was just standing there. But I couldn't make my legs work. Everything was too loud and too far away at the same time. I only snapped out of it when I felt her presence behind me. She didn't speak, just brushed past the other guests and came straight toward me. She reached out, like nothing had happened, like she could just touch away the distance, like I hadn't seen what I saw. And I stepped back. Not angry, not dramatic, just one quiet, final step. I looked her in the eyes, and I said, low enough for only her to hear, "Not after what you did." Her expression shattered, not like glass, but like paper burning from the corner, slow and inevitable. That was the moment the party stopped being a party. That was the moment I stopped pretending. You know what's worse than catching someone in a lie? Realizing they never even tried to hide it properly. That's what really messes with your head, not the betrayal itself, but the fact that they assumed you were too blind or too dull to notice. That's what burned the most. Not Camille's smirk at the party. Not the wine glass clinking against Aiden's. Not even her reaching for my hand like we were still playing happy couple. It was the moment I understood she had stopped respecting me long before she stopped loving me. But to explain how I got to table 9 and why that moment felt like stepping off a ledge, I need to take you back 4 weeks before the party to a Thursday night when I was supposed to be asleep. Camille told me she had a late strategy session. That's what she called them now. Strategy sessions. Like she was going to war, not to a second-floor office with bean bags and a fridge full of kombucha. I didn't question it, not out loud anyway. But the timing was off. She used to tell me everything, even when it was boring. Now her stories were getting shorter, vague, more polished, practiced. That night, I got up around midnight for water. I didn't mean to snoop. I swear on everything, I didn't. I just walked past her home office and heard laughter. Deep, warm, masculine laughter. Through the door. I paused. She told me she was working alone. I leaned in closer, just to confirm what I thought I heard. That's when I caught it, her voice. Not professional. Not her usual I'm in boss mode tone. No, this was softer. Flirtier. The version of her voice I hadn't heard in months. The one she used to use with me when we were still us. I told him I needed space. He doesn't ask questions. A low chuckle followed. His voice again. That's what makes it easy, huh? I backed away before I could hear anything else. My heart pounded like I just sprinted down the hallway. I didn't knock. Didn't confront. I went to the kitchen and stared at the faucet until the refrigerator's hum became unbearable. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. That maybe she was rehearsing a scene. Talking to a friend. Or maybe, in some twisted way, this was all in my head. But I couldn't shake it. From that night forward, something cracked. I stopped waiting for her at the door. I stopped asking how her day went. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and pretended not to. The day the party invite came in the mail, a glossy, embossed card with gold lettering and a ridiculous RSVP website, Camille left it on the counter like it was junk mail. I asked if I could come, pretending I hadn't already peeked at it. Her mouth twitched. That fake smile again. Of course. But it'll be mostly work people. You might feel out of place. She said that without a hint of irony. As if I hadn't already felt out of place in our own marriage for months. I should have backed out. Stayed home. Saved myself the humiliation. But something in me needed to see it. Needed to be sure. And sure enough, by the time we walked through those high-rise double doors and into that gold-lit penthouse filled with curated laughter and artificially confident men, I knew I wasn't part of her world anymore. Camille sparkled in that place. Not because of what she wore, although her red silk dress looked like it had been chosen by someone trying to impress, but because she wanted to be seen. She never looked at me. Not really. Not the way she used to when we'd come home from grocery shopping and collapse on the couch, still laughing about some dumb thing we heard in the frozen foods aisle. She belonged to that room, that crowd, that life. And I was just the plus one she couldn't completely erase. She left me by the bar with some guy named Bryce who wouldn't shut up about cryptocurrency. I drifted toward the hallway, trying to catch my breath, when I passed a partially closed door. And there it was again. The laugh. His. Followed by hers. I froze in front of that door, the same way I had in our hallway weeks before. Same voice. Same tone. Same Camille that wasn't mine anymore. Only this time. I didn't back away. I didn't open it, either. I just stood there, listening, noticing, until the door opened from the other side. And Camille stepped out. Alone. Or at least, appearing to be. She saw me. Her face didn't register shock. Not guilt. Just inconvenience. Like I had ruined a moment she wasn't done having. I've been looking for you, she said casually, smoothing the front of her dress like it mattered. She reached for my hand. And that's when I stepped back. The simplest act of rebellion I've ever committed. Not after what you did. She flinched. Just a little. But for the first time in weeks, I saw her expression drop the mask. And that's when everything really started unraveling. The car ride home after the party was the longest 26 minutes of my life. And that's saying something, considering I once sat through an entire Thanksgiving with Camille's and who only talked about her cat's medical history. Camille didn't say a word. She sat stiffly in the passenger seat, arms folded, staring out the window like I was some stranger she got stuck carpooling with. And I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white, not because I was angry, but because I was trying to keep myself from shaking. The way her hand had reached for mine, the casual, oblivious entitlement of that gesture, it made something inside me go silent. Not dead. Just still, like the air before a landslide. When we got home, she went straight to the bathroom, locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the spot where her heels had made two perfect indents in the carpet. I didn't know if I wanted to scream, cry, or just disappear into the wall. I didn't do any of those things. I just sat there, the phrase still replaying in my head, not after what you did. It wasn't even something I'd planned to say. It came out raw, unfiltered, like it had been waiting at the back of my throat for weeks. She came out 20 minutes later, face washed, dress replaced with an oversized tee. She looked at me briefly and said, "Can we not do this tonight?" And before I could respond, she slipped under the covers and turned away from me like she hadn't just shattered everything we ever built. Like she hadn't stood behind a door whispering to her boss with a voice I hadn't heard in months. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between her soft breaths, wondering what else she'd said behind that door. What else she had done. And more importantly, who she thought I really was. Because clearly, I wasn't a husband to her anymore. I was a placeholder. An audience she no longer performed for. The next morning, I left for work early. Too early. I didn't even need to be in that day, but I had to get out. I drove aimlessly for a while before stopping at this gas station with burnt coffee and a clerk who didn't even look up when I said good morning. That was fine. I didn't want to be seen. By noon, I was parked outside Camille's office. I know how that sounds, but I had to know. I couldn't go another day pretending I didn't see what I saw or hear what I heard. I didn't want to make accusations based on assumptions, but I also didn't want to keep playing this role, the trusting fool. I remembered something Aiden had said at the party, just before Camille noticed me. Let's not keep them waiting. You know where to go. I didn't know who them was, but I figured there had to be a pattern. So I watched. I watched Camille walk out at exactly 12:07 p.m., phone in hand. Fake laugh on loop. She wasn't alone. Aiden was with her. They didn't touch, but their body language told the whole story. They walked too close. They paused at the same crosswalk without speaking. He opened the door to a building across the street, a boutique hotel I'd never noticed before. She followed him in without looking back. I waited. I waited 43 minutes. Then she came out. Alone. Fixing her hair. I didn't confront her. I didn't call her. I drove away, chest hollow, mind spiraling. I knew what it looked like. I knew what I had to do. But I still couldn't believe it. Not Camille. Not the woman who once cried when I made her a hand-drawn anniversary card. Not the woman who used to call me her home. Later that night, I did something I'm not proud of. I set my phone to record and placed it beneath the living room sofa cushion. We rarely sat in there anymore. It was the one place she took personal calls, thinking I wouldn't hear. And I didn't. Until I did. The next afternoon, while she was at yoga, I played it back. It started with silence. Then the creak of the couch. Then her voice, clear, tired, and cruel in a way I didn't recognize. I know. He's starting to suspect. He said something at the party. I think he heard us. A pause. Then Aiden's voice. Muffled but unmistakable. Let him. What's he gonna do? Cry into his spreadsheets. Laughter. The kind you can't fake. And then Camille again. I just need to keep him from digging. A little longer. That was all I could take. I deleted the recording and stood in the middle of our living room, surrounded by throw pillows and memories and lies. My knees buckled slightly, but I didn't fall. I just stood there, broken in perfect posture. She came home an hour later. Asked what I wanted for dinner. I said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. Camille had always been precise with her phone. Not paranoid, just controlled. She never left it unattended, never face up, and it was always on silent, even during dinner, even during movies, even during Sunday mornings in bed with the windows open and nothing but birds and oatmeal in the air. That's why what happened the following Thursday felt like an accident. Or maybe a test. Or maybe the universe just decided to hand me the final piece of proof I didn't know I needed. We were both home that evening, a rare overlap lately. She was curled up on the far end of the couch, pretending to read, her screen lighting up her face every few seconds. I sat across from her, pretending not to notice the flashes of messages she refused to respond to in front of me. She claimed she was just checking in on the weekend retreat planning. Her firm had been talking about some leadership getaway at a lodge upstate. I hadn't been invited. Naturally. She got up to use the bathroom, left her phone next to a half-eaten apple, and didn't realize the screen was still unlocked. I stared at it for about 6 seconds. I'd love to say I wrestled with my conscience. I didn't. I picked it up like I'd done it 100 times, even though I never had. It was open to her messages, not her texts. Her encrypted app, the one she used for work only. I scrolled. The top conversation was named simply, A. And I read it. A. Friday, same room. Don't wear red. I won't survive the distraction. Camille, you liked red. Thought it was your weakness. A. You are. I should have stopped. I should have put it down, left it where I found it, confronted her like a man with dignity. But instead, I scrolled up. And every line felt like it was being carved into me. Camille, he's home tonight. Pretending nothing's wrong. A. That's his talent, isn't it? Camille, I think he suspects, but he's too scared to admit it. Scared. That word stuck to me like wet fabric. That's what she thought I was. That's how she had been describing me. Not betrayed. Not heartbroken. Scared. I locked the phone and placed it exactly where she'd left it, as though it had never moved. She came back moments later and sat down again, completely unaware that I now carried a weight heavier than anything she could imagine. We didn't speak that night. I didn't sleep either. I laid in the dark staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe beside me, and I kept thinking, you're sharing your soul with someone else while I'm right here, disappearing. The next morning, something in me shifted. Not in a heroic way. Not like I suddenly found my spine and prepared to walk out. No, it was quieter than that. Numb. I stopped asking questions. I stopped trying to hold on. I became a ghost in my own house, helpful, quiet, efficient. I folded the laundry, replaced the shower curtain, paid the gas bill, all with the mechanical grace of someone waiting for permission to leave his own life. But the final straw wasn't the messages. It wasn't even what she said. It was what happened the day before the retreat. Camille was rushing around the bedroom, packing with the same enthusiasm I used to see when we were planning anniversary trips. She threw in sweaters I'd never seen, lingerie I knew she hadn't worn for me in over a year, and even printed out an itinerary she didn't offer to show me. I stood in the doorway, watching her stuff 2 days of secrets into a single suitcase. You packed the gray scarf, I said. It was the one I got her last Christmas. She'd barely touched it since. She turned to me and laughed. It matches the mood. Foresty, right? Foresty. I nodded. Then she added, without looking at me, don't wait up. She kissed my cheek, the way someone might kiss a photo before tucking it into a drawer. And then she left. I waited exactly 7 minutes before I picked up her laptop, the one she always took on trips, but forgot this time. That's when I saw it, a note she must have written to herself. Or maybe something she forgot to delete. Or maybe a draft meant for him. It said, If he finds out, he'll crumble. He's not built for the kind of honesty I need. Honesty. What a cruel word in her mouth. I closed the laptop and sat down on the floor of our bedroom, surrounded by all the things I once thought were permanent. The bed. The shared dresser. The framed photo from our honeymoon, still slightly crooked on the wall. I thought about what I wanted to do. Scream? Break something? Walk into the woods and never come back? I did none of that. I got up. I packed a bag. And I left. No note. No speech. No confrontation. Just silence. But I wasn't done. Not yet. She would return in 2 days. And when she did, she'd reach for me like nothing happened. But this time, I'd be ready. When Camille walked through the front door that Sunday evening, she looked like a woman returning from a spa, not from a weekend of lies. Her cheeks were flushed, her curls slightly windblown like she'd stepped off a magazine shoot instead of a 4-hour car ride. She was humming something under her breath as she wheeled her suitcase into the hallway, that small, ridiculous melody she always sang when she was in a good mood. It used to make me smile. Now it made my skin crawl. She didn't call out for me. Didn't ask where I was. That was the first sign. I was watching from the kitchen. I had been home for nearly an hour, long enough to reassemble the carefully placed pieces of the house she thought she left behind. I didn't touch her things, not the suitcase she packed, not the vase she always filled with fake eucalyptus stems, not the unwashed wine glass she left on the coffee table Friday morning. I left everything exactly as it was because I wanted her to feel it, the absence of change, the weight of stillness. She walked into the living room and stopped dead when she saw me. Her lips parted slightly, surprised. Not scared. Not guilty. Just surprised, like a guest who came home to find someone sitting on their couch uninvited. "Waylon," she said, smoothing her coat like that would undo what she'd done. "I didn't think you'd be home." I didn't reply. I just stood there, arms crossed, heart so still I couldn't tell if it was broken or just numb. "I figured you'd be at your sister's," she added, walking toward the kitchen like we were about to discuss dinner plans instead of the slow demolition of our marriage. I followed her with my eyes, not moving an inch. "You didn't even ask." She paused, her back still turned to me, hands hovering near the faucet. "What?" "You never asked where I went," I said, quietly. "You just assumed I'd be gone. That I'd do what I always do, stay out of the way." She turned around slowly. "I didn't mean." "No," I interrupted. "You never mean it. That's the problem. You don't mean the late nights. You don't mean the texts. You don't mean the lies. But they keep happening, don't they?" Her face hardened. Not with guilt, but with calculation. She was already doing the mental gymnastics. I could see it, the way her eyes narrowed, her mouth pressed into a straight line like she was choosing from a list of possible responses. "I don't know what you think you heard," she started. That's when I pulled my phone from my pocket. Not to show her texts, not to play audio, but to show her the photograph. It was a picture I'd taken Friday night. From my car. Across the street from the lodge where her retreat was supposedly taking place. In the photo, she and Aiden were walking side by side, his hand brushing the small of her back, her head tilted up toward him. It wasn't obscene. It wasn't even scandalous. But it was enough. It was proof. The kind that can't be explained away with a sigh and an excuse. Camille's face didn't crumble. It sharpened. "Why were you there?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how quickly she pivoted to control. No apology. No explanation. Just offense. "I wanted to see it for myself," I said. "I wanted to stop feeling crazy." She stepped forward, her voice softening in that manipulative way I'd heard 100 times before when she needed to lower the temperature. "Waylon, you don't understand. It's not what you think." "You're right," I snapped. "It's worse. Because I didn't just think it. I watched it. I heard it. I read it. You've been building something with him behind my back for months. And the only reason you're panicking now is because I didn't fall apart like you expected me to." Her jaw tightened. "You went through my things. You left pieces of yourself everywhere, Camille. You left your mask half off." She looked away. For the first time, her confidence cracked. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the back of a chair, gripping it for balance. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "But you did. Every single day. And you didn't stop. Not when I gave you space. Not when I gave you silence. Not even when I gave you forgiveness for the first time I suspected something." Her eyes widened. "First time," I nodded. "There were others. I just kept choosing to believe you. Because I thought if I gave you enough room, you'd find your way back. And now," I stepped forward, stopping just a foot away from her. Now I realize you weren't lost. You were running. She didn't speak. She just stared at me, not crying, not pleading, just realizing that maybe I wasn't the same man she left behind on Friday. She reached out, instinctively, like she had that night at the party. And once again, I stepped back. Because I meant it the first time. Not after what you did. The next morning was eerie in a way I can't quite describe. Camille had stayed the night. Not that I invited her to. But she slept on the edge of the bed like a stranger, a careful distance between us as though proximity might ignite something we couldn't put out. I lay there, eyes open, listening to her slow breathing, wondering how a person could pretend to sleep so peacefully after everything. But that was her gift, wasn't it? She could walk through the wreckage she created without ever stepping on a shard. I didn't say a word to her when I got up. I didn't ask if she wanted coffee, didn't ask about her dreams, didn't pretend to care what she was doing that day. I just walked into the kitchen, fed the cat, and opened the curtains, something I hadn't done in weeks. And through that half-open pane of glass, I saw something I hadn't expected. A car. Not just any car. His car. Parked just down the street. Tinted windows, low profile, expensive enough to make my 12-year-old sedan look like a child's toy. It didn't belong on our block. I recognized it immediately. I'd seen it before at the office building, at the hotel, at the party, and now it was here. I didn't move at first. I just watched. Waited. It stayed parked for nearly 10 minutes. Then it slowly pulled away. Camille appeared behind me, still in the oversized t-shirt she always wore after pretending nothing happened. She was brushing her hair with a lazy hand. Something wrong. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw it. The nervous twitch in her cheek she thought I never noticed. She'd seen the car too. Nothing, I said, walking past her. Just morning traffic. But I knew better. She hadn't told him. She was still trying to manage both lives, still clinging to the illusion that if she could juggle the timing and the lies just right, she could avoid consequences. Camille didn't just lie. She curated her dishonesty. Carefully. Deliberately. I knew what I needed to do. I waited until she left for her back-to-back strategy meetings, which I now understood was code for whatever lie she needed that day. The moment the door shut behind her, I opened my laptop and started digging. I wasn't looking for more proof. I already had enough. No, this time I wanted contact. I wanted the mask to fall off completely. It didn't take long. I found Aiden's firm bio, his email, even his event schedule. I debated whether to reach out directly. Confrontation was never my thing. I was the type to hold in my disappointment, wear it like an extra layer beneath my shirts. But this time felt different. I didn't email him. I emailed his wife. Her name was Reagan. I only knew that because of a wedding photo Camille once showed me. Back when she thought her boss's life was inspiring. Aiden and Reagan at some oceanside resort, holding hands in front of a floral arch. Camille had laughed then. They looked like a catalog ad. I stared at that photo on Reagan's Facebook profile for nearly a minute before typing. Hi Reagan. I hope this isn't wildly inappropriate. My name is Waylon, and I believe we may have a few things in common. I think it would be best if we spoke privately. I'm not looking for drama, just clarity. If you're open to it, here's my number. I'm sorry you're receiving this. I truly am. Waylon asterisk. I stared at the message before hitting send. I felt like I was throwing a match into a dry field, not knowing which way the flames would go. But it was done. I shut my laptop, sat in silence, and waited. An hour passed. Then another. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I picked it up. The voice on the other end was calm. Collected. Female. Waylon. Yes. This is Reagan. I think. I've been waiting for this call longer than I realized. I didn't breathe for a second. You knew. There was a pause. I suspected. But I think you have the details I was afraid to look for. We talked for an hour. We traded timelines. Stories. Confirmations. She knew about the hotel. About the red dress. About the canceled vacations and the fake meetings. She had seen the late-night texts and the same evasive smiles I had. But what she told me next, that changed everything. He's been planning to leave me, she said quietly. For your wife. That's what I overheard last week. I felt my stomach twist. He told her that? No. He told someone else. A colleague. Said it was just a matter of timing. That he had to be sure she'd walk away cleanly from you. I stood up from the table, gripping the back of the chair like it might steady my reality. So they've already made the decision. Looks like it. I swallowed hard. Thank you for telling me. She sighed. I'm tired of pretending not to see it. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Same. When we hung up, I sat in that still, quiet house and realized what it all meant. I wasn't part of some mistake Camille regretted. I was the safety net she was preparing to let fall. But I wasn't going to fall quietly. It started as a plan without shape, just a flicker in the back of my mind. Not revenge. Not even closure. I wasn't interested in punishing anyone. I wanted one thing: exposure. Not explosive, not dramatic, but undeniable. I didn't want Camille to lie her way through another half-smile or text someone about how fragile I was. I wanted her to stand in a room and be seen, fully seen for what she'd done. And I wanted her to see it, too. So I made a dinner reservation. A simple table for 4 at one of those upscale bistros she loved. The kind with pressed napkins and menu items without prices. A place we'd gone to once, back when things were still good. I told her it was an early birthday surprise. She looked at me with raised brows, maybe a little suspicion behind her eyes, but ultimately nodded. She accepted. Of course she did. Because in her mind, I was still the soft-spoken fool who believed in rebuilding bridges she'd set fire to. She asked what she should wear. Whatever makes you feel most like yourself, I said, and I meant it in a way she didn't catch. She chose the green satin dress, the one she wore the night of the promotion party. The night I first noticed the shift. The night she turned herself into someone I didn't recognize anymore. We arrived at the restaurant on time. Just the two of us at first. The hostess smiled, took us to a quiet corner table by the window. Camille ordered wine, acted like nothing had happened, complimented the ambience. I responded with small nods and hollow agreement. My hands shook under the table, but I kept them folded. Still. Then the second couple arrived. Camille's face didn't change at first when she saw them, just a polite smile, the kind you give when someone you vaguely know walks into a room. Then confusion. Then dread. Because it wasn't just any couple. It was Aiden and Reagan. Aiden, dressed in casual charm, but clearly rattled to see me. Reagan, composed, elegant, eyes razor-sharp. I stood up and offered my hand to her. Reagan, thank you for joining us. Camille looked at me like I'd lost my mind. What is this? A conversation, I said simply. A chance to align timelines. Aiden tried to speak, but Reagan held up a hand. Let's not waste time pretending this is awkward. It's not. It's overdue. Camille's eyes darted between us. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, the confident veneer slipping inch by inch. I turned to her. Would you like to start, or should I? She didn't speak. Reagan took out her phone. I have screenshots. Call logs. Photos. But I think it's more respectful to let you share in your own words, Camille. Camille's voice cracked. Waylon, you ambushed me? No, I said quietly. I invited you. You chose to show up wearing the version of yourself you thought I still believed in. But this isn't about the dress. It's about the truth. Aiden stood, clearly uncomfortable. This is ridiculous. Reagan turned to him without flinching. Sit down, Aiden. You've lied to both of us long enough. Tonight, you're going to listen. He sat. Camille looked pale. Her hand clutched the base of her wine glass like it was a lifeline. I could see it all unraveling behind her eyes, the mental scrambling, the calculations, the panic. I didn't mean for this to happen, she mumbled, more to herself than to us. It just got out of control. But it didn't start by accident, I replied. You started choosing him before you even realized it. The extra meetings. The late-night calls. The red dress. The way you stopped laughing at my jokes. You left me in pieces long before I ever knew what was missing. She said nothing. Reagan leaned forward. He was planning to leave me. Did you know that? Or were you just hoping he would? Camille's lip trembled. I didn't ask him to. But you didn't stop him either, Reagan replied. Silence settled over the table. Thick. Cold. Final. I stood. This isn't about who wins, I said. Because no one wins here. This is about not letting anyone pretend anymore. Camille looked up at me, teary-eyed, but not from guilt, from exposure. She wasn't sad she hurt me. She was terrified people saw it now. I nodded to the waiter and paid for all 4 meals, even though nothing had been eaten. And then, before anyone could say another word, I walked out. Into the night. Into the unknown. But no longer invisible. It's been 4 months since that dinner. 4 months since I walked out of that restaurant and chose, for the first time in years, to stop shrinking myself for someone else's comfort. People expect the aftermath of betrayal to be explosive shouting matches, broken furniture, dramatic exits followed by quiet sobbing in the dark. But the truth? The aftermath is quiet. Still. It's an eerie kind of silence that sits with you in the mornings when you butter your toast alone, and no one comments on your mismatched socks. I moved out 3 days after the dinner, packed what I needed into the back of my car, and left the rest behind. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe Camille a curtain call. She reached out a few times, text at first, then emails, then a hand-delivered letter that she must have slipped under the door of my temporary apartment. I didn't respond to any of them, not because I was angry, but because I was done being her mirror. I'd spent years reflecting back the version of herself she wanted to see: loyal husband, forgiving partner, silent witness. I wasn't going to be that anymore. The hardest part, honestly, wasn't letting go of her. It was letting go of the idea of her, the woman I thought I married. The version I kept rewriting in my head, hoping it was still hiding somewhere beneath the layers of secrets and condescension. But once I let that version go, the world started to look different, lighter, like the air finally had room to breathe again. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. Little things at first, cooking meals I actually liked, not just the ones she preferred. Listening to music without checking if the lyrics would annoy her. Sleeping diagonally across the bed just because I could. Then bigger things, signing up for a ceramics class, joining a weekend hiking group, going to a poetry reading alone without worrying if someone thought I looked weird sitting by myself. I didn't look weird. I looked free. One afternoon, after a hike up a local trail I'd never tried, I sat at the edge of a cliff and watched the sunset behind the hills. It wasn't symbolic or cinematic, no orchestral soundtrack or profound internal monologue. Just me, the wind, and a warm silence I wasn't afraid of anymore. And that's when I realized, healing doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it arrives quietly, sits beside you, and waits for you to notice it's been there all along. As for Camille, I don't know what happened between her and Aiden. I didn't follow up, didn't check social media. I made peace with the fact that some answers won't matter, even if they're available. That's the real freedom, not needing to turn every page just to prove you finished the book. Reagan and I stayed in touch for a little while. Not romantically, just two people who'd shared the same storm and helped each other find shelter. We met for coffee a few times, laughed about the absurdity of everything. One afternoon, she said, "You know, I thought I was weak for staying so long. But maybe we were just trying to protect something that never actually existed." I think she was right. Last week, I moved into a small place with big windows and bad plumbing. It's imperfect, but it's mine. I hung a photo on the wall, not of anyone, just a skyline I shot myself on that same trail. A reminder that things keep moving, even when we think we're standing still. And this morning, for the first time in forever, I woke up. Content. Not ecstatic. Not euphoric. Just content. And for a man who once whispered, "Not after what you did," through clenched teeth and silent heartbreak, that's a victory worth everything.